We could be talking about a lot of different places today. I'm thinking regarding the little country of Bosnia in the Balkan Peninsula, about those countries that sort of fall through the cracks. They're not so bad off, war-torn as they may be, impoverished as they may be, lacking in natural resources, harassed, internal conflicts, yes, but somehow being part of Europe, Eastern Europe, not requiring the kind of constant emergency and philanthropic intervention. What I'm thinking about also here is the relationship between big picture issues, economics, politics, culture. And inside of culture is religion. Now, since 9/11, those of us who are engaged in the realities of our globalized world know that religion has become this huge thing. We thought we were kind of progressing towards a more secular world, and we were so wrong. And so it becomes incumbent upon us to sort of make our peace with the religious element, while we also are so interested in how people's political conditions contribute to their economic conditions. And, of course, there's not just one religion in the world. There are many, many religious perspectives. And one of those religious perspectives might be yours today, non-religion. Nevertheless, it reflects a decision about religion. Now, in the case of Bosnia, in the case of the Balkan Peninsula, we start with 1989, which is the collapse of the Soviet communist system in Eastern Europe. Up until that time, the Balkan Peninsula was one country. It was called Yugoslavia. Now, the cultural memory was very diverse. Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, whatever that little kingdom or princedom had been, Serbia, and other countries. And almost immediately, culture and religion became very, very important. It was a way to distinguish and to perhaps create new nations. Some of them had been created at the end of the First World War, and Yugoslavia sort of popped out after the Second World War and the constant changes that had been taking place throughout the early part of the 20th century. Culture popped into the system around 1990, 91, with a major leader. You may have heard of his name, Slobodan Milosevic. And he played the religion card for all it was worth, to create a greater Serbia. And he wanted the cooperation of his Catholic buddies across the peninsula in Croatia. And late in 1993, there was still a kind of Yugoslavian sensibility. And on a pretty day like this one, the proud armies of Yugoslavia gathered around the beautiful high city of Sarajevo. And generals were up there with the troops and the tanks and all the materiel. People like Karadzic, General Karadzic, and General Mladic, who are now in captivity at The Hague. And the proud citizens of Sarajevo said, "Our army is up there. Send the TV cameras up and let's do some spontaneous interviewing." "Well, we're just up here to do a little maneuvers, you know." Early on Monday morning, those maneuvers turned into bombardment of Sarajevo, and it began the longest siege of a European city in European history. And the Sarajevans, the Bosniaks, endured constant shelling and sniper attack. Finally, around 1997, it took the president from the south of us, Bill Clinton, to start really putting pressure on the Serbs, and the fighting stopped, and they pulled out of Sarajevo. In the meantime, however, and this is where we'll start talking about Bosnia, in the meantime, the two major powers that had been working to create a kind of two-nation state situation in the Balkan Peninsula had already begun fighting each other over how they would divide it up. And today, even up to today, Serbia and Croatia, as much as they may have been opposed to anything like a Bosnian state, are even more opposed to each other. But the Bosnians benefited from that. Now, it took a long time. I started going to Bosnia every year to take part in efforts to understand the complexity of cultural diversity, religious diversity. Here was this little country of Bosnia with 1 kilometer of coastline that had been granted to it on the Adriatic. Can you imagine having a little beachfront for a whole country 1 kilometer long? Well, as I traveled there, I would see reconstruction in Croatia, reconstruction in Serbia, but very little, precious little reconstruction in Bosnia. And this was seriously a problem. It seemed to me like every fourth building had been bombed out or shot up, and there was just no rebuilding going on into the early part of our new century and into the latter part of the first decade. Nothing was going on. It's a very sad situation. Because no matter how much the rivalry between the two attacking countries sort of prevented further attacks on Bosnia, it was still a very unstable situation. And terrible brain drain took place. Lots of, almost 2/3 of the intellectual and professional community of the Bosnians was in foreign countries, like Canada, doing their business, trying to build new lives. And they weren't going back because it was so unstable and so scary. But then 2008 hit. And we know we're still living in the aftermath of that economic disaster year. What was really good about it, however, for Bosnia, was that now for sure there was no money in Eastern Europe to do very much with military and armies. And as people started to get a sense with the atmosphere of, hey, even if they wanted to attack us this year, there's no money to attack us. And 2008 became 2009, 2010. And in about 2010, Bosnians who had been out of the country for 15 or more years started doing something that is a part of the good stories in our world of immigration. Sometimes immigration is about asylum, just escaping an impossible situation, and that situation is so bad you'll never go back. You might send a little money home or something. But we live in an interconnected world, and part of our interconnected world means we also have relatives back where we immigrated from. And we still love them. We still kind of regard the place of our birth as home. And sometimes we go back. Year after year, when I would go to Bosnia, it was just a pretty sad situation. This year, however, just a couple of months ago in August, I started driving through the countryside and noticing that even though the government has almost no money, and even though the unemployment rate is just wretched, like 88%, in some towns of 10,000 or so, you can count on two hands the number of people who have full-time jobs. It's just a sort of barter situation. The other countries have rebuilt quite well. They're waiting for full membership in the EU. Bosnia has a little application in there, but how do you participate? And especially with such economic problems. But what we're seeing now, what I started seeing was that there was enough political liberty and political encouragement. There had developed enough cultural understanding. The country has no absolute majority religion, but it is considered, because of the 46% Muslim population, European Muslim, not Arab or Middle Eastern Muslim, but European, going back 1,000 years. And that may be a sore spot for those who identify themselves as, traditionally Christian. What are the Bosniaks doing having their own country with Muslim identity dominating? But within Bosnia, they're kind of working that out. Croatian Bosnians, Serbian Bosnians, that is Catholic and Orthodox Bosnians, and then the Muslim Bosnians. They're kind of working it out. And they're kind of figuring out how some of their estranged brothers and sisters can come back into the country and invest. And all of this rebuilding that you can see from north to south, east and west in this little country of Bosnia is almost all entrepreneurial. And probably the most important thing that happened to me, my conference every year is held in Mostar, the beautiful little city of Mostar. And boy, was that place bombarded during that war. And it's been slowly reconstructed. And as I was leaving the conference with my driver, he goes, "Oh, by the way, in a couple of months, our new shopping mall is about to open. And it looks kind of like Penn Center, only brand new." And one of the, not only the leading shopping mall in St. Catharines, but in this whole southern Ontario area. I couldn't believe this gleaming 3-story, 4-story thing about to open its doors for the people of Mostar and the environs, because they will be coming from all over to get into that mall. It was so impressive. And all done by people with some cultural understanding of their diversity and their rivalries, and some political liberty to do the entrepreneurial thing. There was no money in the government, no money in the other institutions, but there were people from places like Canada who had built some success and were now transmitting that success back into their original home. Keeping Canadian identity or wherever they're coming from, and yet enriching Bosnia with the degree of peace and stability that, at least politically and culturally, they've been able to establish for themselves. That's an interesting story, and it can be repeated even in our own world, where there are less than success stories in urban areas and other places. Thanks for your attention.